All right, now, knock like this. Okay, remember bouncing, we need knock like this. Now touch your head. Okay, good. Knock like this, touch your head. We got that going. Okay, ready, set, go. Knock, touch your head. Okay, can you go give me that pencil? All right, yeah, bounce, bounce, bounce. Things like that. So getting the motivation, that's part of everything. Because I can tell you all of this stuff, say, oh, let's do this, but how do I get the motivation? And a lot of these examples too are like, how do you get the motivation? As a student 5, I won't spend too much time on these examples because I'm gonna, hopefully you will write for a copy. Capture trials, again, this is just a continuum. There's not clearly, oh, is that a game situation or a scrimmage? Don't worry about that. It's just, are they, level of really fake and contrived to more real. Asking the child to open the door while your arms are filled with books. That's when I remember a parent telling me that, all of this training we're doing at the table and at the center, and she said, one day I'm coming home and my hands are filled with groceries, and my boy went and opened the door for me. And he, not because I asked him to, but because he saw that I couldn't. And it's like, yeah, that's what it's about. That's a real skill. And that's asking it, now you say, well, how is this a game situation? Asking a child if he sees an animal with stripes while at the zoo. And I say that's like a game situation, because that's what you would do with a typical kid. Why I say the school is like a game situation. So when I say the game situation, it's like just being typical, or closer to typical. You're at the zoo, you don't just say zebra. That's where you might have to start with, but what color are those stripes on the zebra? Well, what other animal here? What animal did you see that has stripes? Oh, yeah, the tiger. Well, what color are those stripes? Oh, well, what animal has spots? Okay. And talking about that, always, instead of doing, this kind of a lame example, I mean, you take this out. Instead of handing a student a game on a shelf, conducting a man trial. Basically, you replace that with that. Instead of giving the boy the ketchup, set it down right there and play dumb a little bit. Stop short. Sometimes you've got all of these things. And that's where when I say, think about the kitchen, think about dinner. If you can come up with, it might seem overwhelming right now, all of these things, but one day, in one dinner, I bet you could think of 4 things that you could do differently. And then let's say there's 3 people in your family that are active or that can do this, a couple of siblings, mom, dad, grandma. You each come up with 2 ideas a day. You talk about how you're going to do them. You keep a list. You add to them. Pretty soon, you've got a huge list. But then pretty soon after that, you don't have to keep a list because you've taught yourself to think that way. How can I turn this into a language trial? Okay? In the school, or how do you combine? Why do we teach counting? Why do we teach labeling? In isolation, it's not very useful, but we do things with it. Okay? So I've taught you today about convertibles. We've been working on counting. I've already taught you where the window was, what a window is. I said, hey, let's look out the window. See if there's any convertibles out here, because we're sitting here talking about convertibles. Okay? Go look, see if there's any convertibles. Count all the convertibles. Now we're combining skills. Now again, is that a functional life survival skill? No, but it's a social, it's real, because that's something that kids would do, and that they'll do to each other. Now we're getting into some of the social. And again, I could give examples. I could separate these examples into levels. Some of these are higher level classroom. That's a far cry and a difference from, I'm going to give you a juice box but no straw. And all you have to do is say straw or sign straw. That's at a lower level. This is a little higher level. Challenge the student to count the number of girls that are passed on the way to music class. While at music, ask are there more percussion or string instruments in the music room. Just generate ideas. Now the setting doesn't define the type of training. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, so you do the street trial at the table, and you do natural environment training on the playground. Problem there is I go out onto the playground and I see people with their picture cards laid out on the playground, doing, what's this, what's this, what's this? And now you swing as the reinforcer. That is not natural environment training. That's training in an environment that is not the table. Okay? And you can do that, nothing wrong with that, just don't call it natural environment training. Okay? And I suggest that a lot. Hey, this kid likes to swing, let's go out and use the swing as a reinforcer. But that's not natural environment training. That's using something in the environment, in the natural environment, I guess, as a reinforcer. So you don't want to count that. You don't want to say, yeah, we do about half our work in the natural environment, but isn't natural environment teaching? And often it's not. Also, you can do a lot of good natural type training right there at the table or in the room. When I say table, again, I don't always mean physical table, the floor or whatever, but structure. When you're doing some more structured teaching, whether you're at the table, let's just say in the therapy, you can do a lot of good teaching. It's not so much about where you are as it is how you're teaching. Okay? So asking a student, hey, what do you smell with? I'm always trying to teach people, get people to get more out of that trial. Again, why did you teach that? What are you going to do with it? What do you smell with? And you can imagine this program where you're saying, what do you smell with? What do you hear with? What do you see with? Can you see how that can be rote? It's like, okay, when I say smell, what's the answer? Nose. Why did you say nose? Because you said smell. Okay? How do I know it's not rote? How do I know you really know what you're talking about? So keep going with that. And, let's tell you at least, what do you smell with nose? Well, let's do some trials on smelling. Smell this, smell that. And it's harder. Smelling's a little bit harder than, let's say, seeing or hearing. But you can say, you can easily say, tell me when you see my finger. Because we can both see that. Do you see this? Do you see this? Now do you see it? Do you see this? Do you hear that? We can both hear that. So smelling's the same. Do you smell this? But the smells kind of linger, and that's a little bit harder. But the point is, let's do something about it. We're talking about senses. We're talking about hearing. We're talking about seeing. We're talking about smelling. We're talking about nose. Well, let's add some actual smells and sounds in there and talk about them and talk about the differences. And if I'm talking about what sound does a lion make, or what sound does an airplane make, somehow try to, get that in. Take advantage of, what's that I hear? We do that all the time, teaching kids to label sounds. Well, let's do that in the natural environment. That should be the easiest. I hear, what is that? There's a dog barking, there's an airplane. Okay? Now, let's talk about airplanes. Well, I talked about that at the table today. I talked about airplanes and about wings. Now I just heard one. Let's talk about airplanes a little bit. Okay? After asking a student what's needed in the rain, and here's where it becomes, creative, having materials ready. Okay? Questions about a ball. What do you bounce? Hand the student a ball. Say, hey, bounce this ball. Can you throw this ball? And there's an example. Notice the mix, because if I hand, and there's a test I can say, watch, this kid can do a two-component. I'm going to hand him a ball, and I'm going to say, bounce the ball, and he bounces the ball. Okay, and I say, let me try something. And I hand the kid the ball, and I say, throw the ball, and he bounces the ball. Got to make sure that you're really teaching around everything. Think in terms of like matrix. Bounce the ball, throw the ball, kick the ball, bounce the. I always get in trouble when I use this example because I can't think of other things that bounce. Bounce the tire, roll the tire. What do you tell time with? Well, what time is it now? Can you find a clock in this room? What time do you go to bed? Well, the kid can't tell time. Okay. You still like. Then the question becomes, is that a relevant thing to teach? Maybe, maybe not. Do you really need to teach what a clock is and all of those things before the kid can tell time? I'm not saying yes or no, but I'm just saying these are questions that that you should ask. But for a lot of kids, if you're gonna say, what do you tell time with? The point being, these questions, these interverbals, these questions can easily become rote. So I never want it to end there. If I say, tell me an animal that has wings, I want to make sure you know what wings are and what they're for. If I say, what do you tell time on, I want to make sure you at least know what a clock is, what it looks like. And even if you can't tell time, at least understand that people in your world tell time, and some of your schedule depends upon time. And at some point, I'm hoping that you will be able to tell time. But until then, at least, you know, I'm gonna teach you what you need to know about a clock, and not just touch the clock. Okay? What do you brush your teeth with? Toothbrush. Well, here, brush Woody's teeth. Show me brushing your teeth. What am I doing? Brushing my teeth. Now what am I doing? Brushing your hair. Whatever. Brush Woody's teeth. Okay? What's a frog say? Ribbit. And usually you say, the next response usually is, when I say in my 20 years, and I like to go back because I don't want you to think that I walk through the halls here and see this, but examples. What's a frog say? What's a cat say? What's a cow say? What's a pig say? What's a... And that's what, well, what's a frog say? Well, let's stick with frogs a little bit. Ribbit, what's a frog do? Hops, okay? Show me hopping like a frog. Let's hop like a frog. Let's hop over to the window and see if we can see any frogs outside. Okay? Tying those things together. Show me what you cut with. Follow that with show me cutting. Show me writing. What do you cut? What do you write on? Okay? So that's where you get into, we get into a lot of trouble with our kids when we hear things like, what do you write on? Pencil. Okay? And the response often is, oh, sort of, you're close. No, not close at all. There's two parts to that. That's totally wrong. Okay? And that tells me it's like, well, okay, you're not paying attention, and that's a whole other thing that you have to say. So we have to teach that way. Because otherwise it's just, I say, anytime you mention write, the answer is pen. Or anytime you say cut, the answer is scissors. Well, I want you to say scissors if I say with, and I want you to say paper if I just say what do you cut. That's less relevant to whether there's an example of the setting doesn't matter. That's, you don't have to have a totally natural set up to teach that, but that's something if you want it to be real and useful. What do you talk on? Hand a student a telephone. Pretend to be having a conversation. Trial has to do with pouring. You pour juice. You pour sand, rice, cereal. Mix in verbs, nouns, verb, noun, tags. What am I doing? Pouring rice, pouring juice, pouring sand, pouring cereal, stirring rice, pouring cereal, eating, not sand. Point is mixing those. Here's where you think matrix. I've got rice and I've got sand. I can pour and I can stir. And I want you to tell me what I'm doing, and I want you to do this. I want you to stir the rice. I want you to pour the rice. I want you to stir the sand. I want you to tell me I'm stirring the rice, I'm pouring the rice, I'm stirring the sand. So again, the setting, these aren't really natural environment trials, but they're closer to functional, ensuring the responses aren't rote. And that's one of the main reasons to do natural environment training. Also, you can do a lot of natural environment training. I like to get away from the table, even if it's for a trial or two or something. Add another response. Whether it's just another, I'm going to ask you another question, but sometimes you can just add another response. Let's say, what is this? It's a sink. Well, go find the sink in the bathroom. Show me the real sink. If it's an action figure, show me dancing. Show me jumping. Which one of these figures is dancing? Or what's Woody doing? Dancing. Well, you show me dancing. Let's dance. Tie in some music to that. What do you drink from? Hey, can you go get a cup? Are you thirsty? Why do we drink? Why are we talking about cups? Well, go give me a cup because I want to pour you some juice. Here's a picture of a computer. Can you find where this goes, the real computer? That's one thing I like to do, a lot of matching sample in the real environment. You can make a game out of that. Sometimes the game I like to play is here's a picture of the refrigerator. The kid goes to the refrigerator. When he gets there, he learns there's another picture. On the refrigerator, there's a picture of a sink. Now it goes to the sink. Just little things, little games that you can play. And why would you do that? Well, it's sort of almost like following a list. If you think about what skill does it take to be able to follow a list of things or to write your own list or respond in that way. Do rocks float? No. How do you know that? Why did you answer do rocks float? Because if I do, you'll give me an M&M. Okay. Because that's what I've learned. If we say do rocks float, I've learned the answer is no. Okay. We need to go beyond that. Well, let's demonstrate. Let's go to the sink. You think this will float? And I do this with my kids. This is one of the games they play. They'll pick up a plastic and let's guess, will this float or will this sink? Because what does that mean to float and to sink? And with all these examples, what I have in common is just teaching someone to answer a question is not good enough. You got to know. Because I can guarantee with some kids that I've worked with, I could guarantee that I could teach them to answer that question every time. Do rocks float? And they will say no. And then I could guarantee that they do not know what float or sink means. Which means I would teach that in the first place. I would teach before I'm going to skip this part. Different types of teaching. When you're in the natural environment, there's a difference between teaching about that environment, which is necessary, but it's still not quite full natural environment teaching. We're in the kitchen. I want to teach you what the sink is, where the sink is, to label sink, about the sink. This is the floor, this is the ceiling, these are the lights. You kind of have to know that. But it's still not that full teaching about the activity. Conducting trials in the natural environment that are specific to the activity. These are the best situations. Okay? The trials consist of using what the student is doing at that time. So let's say you're playing with a train. Okay? What can you talk about? And think about how many times you see a kid playing with a train, two or something, and that's it, or the kid's playing with the train. What can you do with the train set? And here's where I would start. Okay, write down all the things that you can do with the train, with this particular child. So that means, what about this setting? What about the trains? What about this kid's repertoire? Because you may not be able to do all of these things that I'm suggesting. You may be able to do more things than I'm suggesting in this example. So you've got trains, you've got tracks, you've got transportation, airplanes. And sometimes I say that because if you're going to talk about trains, you're talking about transportation, let's talk about some other things. What are some other options? So there's trains. Well, what are trains for? Well, it carries people. Oh, well, what else carries people? Airplanes, cars. Well, what's the difference between a car and an airplane? I'm not saying you have to ask these questions, but things to think about. Because if I'm going to ask you, tell me a vehicle, planes, trains, and automobiles, I say, yeah, my favorite movie. But that's easy. But I want to teach you about those. Okay? Colors. We talk colors. Well, what's the difference? Give me the red color. Speed, fast and slow. That's a good one. And I'll give an example for you here. Tunnels, circles, counting, all of these things. So here's what it might look like. Hey, which car do you want? Oh, the red one. Okay, here it is. What do you put this on? Do I put it on my head? No. Okay, where do you put this? The track. Okay. Hey, what shape does this track make? Figure 8 or it's round. Your circle, right. Hey, what do you like to eat that's round? Just to make sure. It's a circle, it's round. Are you just memorizing that, or do you know what round is? Let's talk about round a little bit. And now if I want to, I can talk a little bit more about food, or I can come back. In this example, I'm going to come back to trains. Well, who drives the train? Okay, what does that mean? We just say, oh, the conductor drives the train. or an engineer, well, who drives an airplane? Okay, a pilot. Now, that could still be wrote, obviously, but